Kelly, that's right. The reporters were called into the cabinet meeting, got a chance to see some of the goings on here. And we've got a couple of headlines. One is that the president says he will be announcing tariffs on autos, aluminum, and pharmaceuticals in the very near future. Those are the so-called sectoral tariffs. One of the big questions over the weekend was whether the White House was signaling it was not going to go through with sectoral tariffs, even as it did reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd. The president here signaling that those sectoral tariffs are certainly coming in the very near future. Not clear whether that's April 2nd or not. Also, the president saying that he wants interest rates to come down, and the Treasury Secretary saying in this meeting that he believes interest rates will come down as energy prices decline. One thing to flag for you, Kelly, though, just in terms of the president's activity on social media so far today. Earlier today, he posted a threat on social media saying that any country that does business with Venezuela, that is particularly oil business with Venezuela, will face a 25% secondary tariff on all of that country's trade with the United States. Why is that significant? Well, China is a big importer of Venezuelan oil. I am told by a White House official that the president means that that 25% will be in addition to existing tariffs on that country. So in the case of China, he's already put 20% tariffs on China. This would be in addition to the 20%, so a total now of 45% tariffs on China as soon as next week. The president's saying the paperwork on this will be drawn up by April 2nd. So if you believe that the president's going to go through with this, that portends significant changes for global trade coming next week. Kelly, back over to you.
Amen. If you don't mind, could you restate what you said in about, maybe a sentence or two with the newest new part?
So the newest new part is that the president says he does envision tariffs going in place very soon, in the very near future, on the sectoral things. That's the comment that he made in the cabinet meeting just now, that just wrapped. But we also have some analysis from a White House official who says that the president's tweet earlier today about secondary tariffs on Venezuela implies that his intent is for 45% tariffs on China as soon as next week, because China is a big importer of Venezuelan oil, and this tariff will go on anybody who's doing business with Venezuela.
Got it. Thank you. Hopefully I'm not the only one who struggles a little bit with all of these twists and turns.
Bouncing balls, bouncing fast. But this one has huge implications for global trade.
I thought he had said no to autos. Now autos are back on?
That's the comment that the president just made in the Oval Office to reporters. We'll be announcing tariffs on autos, aluminum, and pharmaceuticals in the very near future. We haven't seen the playback yet, Steve, from this, so we're just going off of what the wire reporters in the room were saying, but that is the comment from the president in the room just a short time ago.
Eamon, really appreciate it. Eamon Javers. Yep. A quick check on the markets, and we were wisely just showing shares of the automakers. Everyone's taking this in stride, but Professor Davis, sometimes that doesn't always last from now until we've had a chance to digest it, and sometimes it does. I mean, at a certain point, do people just look past it and say, well, we hear a lot of talk, we're waiting to see what the real action is?
Well, this whole conversation just illustrates the point that Steve Leisman was making earlier and why it's hard to look past it. We don't know what's going to happen, we being firms and producers and so on, as in his example of a manufacturing plant. So I agree with Steve. There's the direct effects of the tariff hikes themselves, which I think are bad for the economy and the consumers as a whole. But there's also this uncertainty. We've had already two major pieces of news about trade policy today. What are you to do as a business decision maker trying to decide how to optimize your supply chains, trying to decide what products to produce, where to source them from, which markets to be in, and which markets to give up on? All of that is paralyzing some business investment and hiring decisions, and that's not good.
So another, because I was going to joke, you just do nothing, maybe. But to your point,
even nothing's a big deal, Kelly.
Well, not just that.
Nothing is a very, very big deal.
Sure, but even just to keep the status quo going, to Stephen Davis's point,
you have to invest. They're always trying to grow. They're always trying to push their margins.
And right, and if you don't do just forget whether things might change. If you can't just go with the usual course of action because you're not sure now if the incentives are going to change, then I take your point that could hold up investment. And are we seeing that in the GDP data yet, or it's way too soon, Stephen Davis?
a little bit too soon. The GDP data come out with a lag. And remember, things really only started to explode in the trade policy direction after President Trump's inauguration, his second inauguration. Before that, there were expectations that there would be higher tariffs, but not, I think, quite as much as we've seen. And certainly, to Steve Leisman's point again, not with so much back and forth, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow type of approach. So something that's laid out more clearly and also in advance so that companies can plan would be a more sensible way to implement a regime of higher tariffs if that's where the president wants to go.
Steve Leisman, quick last word.
Well, we just need a theory of the case here, right? What are you trying to do? What is the upside on the backside of these tariffs that are going to punish people? I have seen statistics, Kelly, that show there are scores more workers involved in the use of steel than in the making of steel. I don't disagree. There's some national security element to this, that you do want some form of a steel industry. But you know what? When we were friends with Canada, that wasn't a problem. So I'll just leave that there.
Now he's advocating that we use Canadian steel in our wars.
Well, they used to be our good friends. The only rivalry we ever had with Canada.
They could be again.
Then they could be again.
Gentlemen, thank you. Steve Leisman, Stephen Davis, appreciate it on a busy news hour already.